Good afternoon. Welcome to the Midday Mull for Thursday, the 31st of July. With McShane, we continue reading through Acts, following the story of Paul and his missionary journeys. In chapter 17, he was in Athens, and then in chapter 18, he moves on to Corinth. And while he's in Corinth, there's the usual opposition, and people come to have him chucked out. But the governor says, I want nothing to do with this. It's internal squabbles, nothing to do with me, go away. And so Paul isn't thrown out of Corinth. And indeed, an angel of the Lord, he has a vision of a man saying, God has got many people in Corinth, so you can stay there for a long time. Verse 11 then has, so Paul stayed in Corinth for a year and a half, teaching them the word of God. A year and a half. That was a long time compared to some of Paul's other ministry, where he came into town, spoke in the synagogue for 2 or 3 weeks, and then there was a furore and he got chased out. And indeed, it's repeated again in verse 18. Paul stayed on in Corinth for some time. So Paul's in Corinth for a long time. And as I read that, I thought, we would assume that with Paul being in the city for such a long time, the church would have been solidly established. It would have been the peak church of the area, and everyone would have looked to Corinth for leadership and guidance, and they would have had all their problems sorted out, and everything would have been perfect in Corinth with a teacher like Paul. That's what one would expect. But then you read the letters to the Corinthians, and they suddenly squabbling amongst themselves, and some are identifying with Paul, and some with Apollos, and some with Peter, and there's immorality in the city, in the church, of somebody that's sleeping with his father's wife, and church is doing nothing, even seemingly approving of it. And there's all these problems with the church. And it made me realize that a good teacher is a good teacher, but it depends on how the people respond. And the devil, when there's a good teacher, the devil will come in very quickly to try and undermine and get everything wrong, because the devil doesn't want the church to grow well. And it also just, to me, in the modern world, there are a number of wonderful preachers about, and one looks at them and one, well, certainly I, assume their church must be really good. But we shouldn't be disappointed when we find out that church, like all churches, has got its problems. And they could be problems of any kind of description, because that's what people do. And if the church that Paul spent that amount of time in had serious problems, any church with any pastor and preacher and leader is likely to have problems as well. And so as Christians, we've got to constantly be looking at what are we doing, and are we walking in the way of the Lord? Are we sorting things out? Not just are we relying on somebody else. Are we individually and corporately following Jesus as closely as we can? And that's always the challenge that we face. So be encouraged, be challenged, and know that as we walk with God, we are blessed.